This conference will now be recorded.
Systems.
Okay.
And okay, I found something different because whenever we create some cluster receiver or cluster sender channel, we need to define the cluster name, right, sir?
No, you no need to define. There is no such kind of define cluster command in MQ, but we need to just alter the repos property.
Okay.
If you want to add that queue manager as a full repository, that's it.
Okay. Let me just share the output in the chat window, so you can tell me where I'm going wrong.
Sure. Ping me the chat. Hi, Rahul. Rahul, you are on mute.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, very good morning. So Sachin is asking some doubts in the clusters. So he's going to ping his doubts.
Yes, sir.
So
it seems that the MQ object not found. It says whenever I display this cluster queue manager command.
Okay, it means that queue manager is not part of the cluster. So you have not added that queue manager in the cluster.
Okay.
So this command you are executing in which queue manager? In full repository queue manager or in partial repository queue manager?
It's a partial repository, sir.
Okay, so it means you have not added. So we have to create a proper cluster sender channel that points to a cluster sender. Sorry, that points to a full repository. Then you have to create a cluster receiver pointing to itself, and then you have to create a listener and then start it so that it will be added to the cluster.
Okay. Let me just what I was talking, I was let me just share the channel status as well, so we
can. Definitely, status would be inactive because it is not part of the cluster queue manager. So I don't think the channels will be running. Anyway, let's share the output.
No, sir, this is not a part of the cluster, so we can continue with the session.
Okay, so that is what I told you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so in the last session we have discussed about a full-fledged cluster and workload balancing is also done, right? So let me open the PPT. Clusters. Okay, so in the previous session, like we were able to successfully build a four queue manager cluster, QM3 pointing to QM1 and QM4 pointing to QM2. So in QM3 cluster receiver, in QM4 cluster receiver. So the name is going to be QM4 here. And here this queue manager name is QM3 as a partial repository. And we have also created a cluster queue in QM4, also another cluster queue in QM2 with the same name like QL4, and here also QL4, and we have enabled a workload balancing also, like whenever we try to put a message in QM3 into QM4, that will be distributed to QL4 of QM2 and QL4 of QM4. So workload balancing we have seen. Now today the thing is, cluster concept is almost done, but we have missed to discuss one thing. The thing is, what we have missed was we have missed how to remove a cluster queue manager from the cluster. So for example, right now, let's assume that this queue manager tree is no more needed and I need to shut it down. I need to delete it. So we need to remove the queue manager from the cluster. So what are the things we need to do that? So before seeing the queue manager, I mean, how to remove a queue manager from the cluster. So first of all, let's see the architecture in our environment. So we already have 4 queue managers, QM1, QM2, QM3, QM4, which are running fine as the members of the cluster. So if I go to QM1, which is full repository, it will display all the queue managers list. If I execute display plus qmgr and qm type command, like QM1, QM2 as the full repositories, QM3, QM4 are the normal repositories. It means partial. Now our thing is we have to remove QM3 queue manager from the cluster. That's our intention. Now if I go to queue manager 3, if I do display plus qmgr, see it is a member of the cluster and it is showing all the details like QM1, QM2, QM3 and QM4. Now the thing is we have to remove QM3 from the cluster. So how to do that? So the thing is to add a queue manager from the cluster, to add a queue manager to the cluster, we already know the procedure. So the procedure is we have to create a cluster sender. Okay, let's come to QM3. In QM3, to add this into training cluster, we have created a cluster sender pointing to QM1. Then we have created a cluster receiver pointing to itself, and then we have created a listener at 1416 under the queue manager control. These are the 3 steps what we have done. Now to remove the queue manager from the cluster, what would be the steps? Any guess?
Sir, instead of QM3, can you take QM1 because QM1 is a full repository and also
Okay.
it is having like if we want to put a message in QL4, the queue which is created in QM4, then from QM3 can you try to push some messages
Okay.
just
Okay.
to
So you
check
want to
whether
see
QM3 and QM4 having any connections, logical connections or not.
all right. So you want to see a scenario like you want to remove QM1 full repository from the cluster, and then you want to test your cluster scenario, correct?
Correct.
Fine, no problem. Let's do that. So being QM1 as a full repository, if we want to add this into the cluster, what we have done, first of all, we have made this queue manager as a full repository in the cluster. Then we have created a cluster sender pointing to QM2. Then we have created a cluster receiver pointing to itself. And then we have created a listener at 1414 port, and then we have started it. Now to remove it from the cluster, so the steps are going to be like this. So to add a queue manager, first of all, for QM1, we have done this, right? So the steps are going to be, we need to empty the repos property, and then we need to stop the cluster sender channel, and then we need to delete it. I mean, deletion is not needed, but we need to stop it. And then we need to stop the cluster receiver. We need to stop the cluster receiver, and then we need to stop the listener. That's it. And then we need to do a reset on the cluster, so that reset on the queue manager, so that it will be removed from the queue manager. It will be removed from the cluster.
So, but
So
if you see controlled way, in that case you should start with start with the channels first, right?
correct,
Like to
exactly,
stop the channels.
exactly, correct. First of all, you need to stop the cluster sender channel, and then you need to remove the cluster from the you need to remove the channel from the training cluster. It means we need to empty this attribute. Now we need to stop the cluster receiver channel, and then we need to
Remove it from
remove
training
the
cluster.
channel from the training cluster, and then we need to stop the listener, and finally we need to reset the
Remove
cluster
the
in the
repos
QM1.
property.
No. Before repose, we need to reset the cluster. I will tell you what is resetting a cluster.
Okay.
And then we need to remove it. Total 5 steps. So first thing is, So steps are going to be like this. Number one, stop cluster sender. I mean, here manually created, automatically created sender channel, don't touch them. You don't have any control over it. Only Kubernetes takes care of it. So we have to start the cluster sender, which are manually created. Start the cluster sender, and we have to remove the channel from the cluster. This is the step number one. Now step number two, stop cluster receiver and remove the channel from the cluster, and then stop the listener, and then reset the cluster in qmgr qm1. Like we want to remove qm1 queue manager from the cluster, right? So we need to reset it. So what is the reset? That I will show you. And finally, nullify the repose property of qm1, because as it is being a full repository, we need to make it empty. So this is the process. So first, let's follow the order. Now we need to start the cluster sender in qm1. So we need to remove the queue manager qm1. So what we'll do is we'll go to qm1 queue manager. We'll see what are manually created channels and we'll stop them. Okay, this is step number one. So I will go to qm1. Okay, before removing this queue manager, so first of all, we'll see how many queue managers are there in QM. We'll see how many queue managers QM1 is reflecting in the cluster. If I do display plus qmgr qm type, fine, it is showing all the queue managers, and also QM1 has been marked as a full repository, right? And then, okay, hold on, guys, hold on. Before doing all these things, being a full repository, right? We have to do one thing. We need to suspend the queue manager from the workload balancing. This is step number one. And then we need to stop the cluster sender, then cluster receiver, then a listener, and then reset, and then we need to nullify the queue manager. So total 6 steps,
So
guys.
suspending the queue manager from workload balancing you're doing because you have added it into workload balancing, correct?
No, QM1 we have not added in the workload balancing. Only QM2 and QM4 we have added, right? In our case.
Yeah, correct.
Correct. So the thing is, although you have added the queue manager into the workload balancing or not, first of all, we need to suspend the queue manager from the workload balancing if you want to remove it from the cluster. Because by default, every queue manager will be acting as a workload balancing. Here, before suspending it, I will tell you, I will show you one command. Excuse me. I will go to QM1. I will show you one cluster command here. Display plus qmgr qm type suspend. So this command will show you how many queue managers are there in the cluster and what are their types and if it is suspended or not from the cluster. This is the meaning of this command. See, if I execute this command, QM1, it's a full repository. So we have filtering QM type, it is where we got it. And also now I'm seeing the details of suspend also. Suspend no. By default, every queue manager in the cluster will be having suspend no. It means it is not suspended from the workload balancing. It is still in the workload balancing. And also QM2 is also not suspended. QM3 is also not suspended. QM4 is also not suspended. So for the first step is going to be, we have to suspend QM1 from the workload balancing. It will be part of cluster, but workload balancing is not going to happen. That is the meaning of suspending from workload balancing. Okay. So if I want to suspend QM1 from the workload balancing, the command is going to be suspend, a new MQSC command we are learning. Like if you see all the 18 MQ commands, we know most of the commands. Now we are learning a new command called suspend. Suspend means if you want to remove a queue manager from the workload balancing, like when you want to suspend a queue manager from the workload balancing, then suspend is the right command. So command is going to be suspend qmgr. Okay, let me recollect, guys. Suspend qmgr cluster name. Okay, as simple as that. Suspend qmgr cluster training cluster. Now, say it gives you an information that suspend queue manager has been accepted. Now, if I verify display plus qmgr command, qm type suspend. Now see, qm1 suspend is now as. It means now yes, it is suspended from the training cluster. So workload balancing is not going to happen. So right now qm1 still a member of the cluster, but only workload balancing concept has been suspended temporarily. That is the meaning of suspend. Okay. Now, if I want to resume it to workload balancing, I want to resume back to workload balancing, then there is another command that is called resume. Resume is also one of the MQC command. For example, right now we have seen about suspend command. Now we are seeing resume command. Resume is a command to resume back to workload balancing. So like resume qmgr cluster the training cluster. Now see request accepted. Now display plus qmgr qm type suspend. See again, now it's again resumed back. It's now not suspended. This is how we can suspend a queue manager from the workload balancing, and also we can again resume back it from the workload balancing. So which queue manager you want to suspend, you have to enter inside the queue manager and then you have to execute suspend and resume commands. So let me note down them. Okay, here it is. Sixth one, suspend qmgr cluster training. This is the syntax. So to suspend a qmgr from training cluster. If I want to resume it back, the command is resume. Resume qmgr cluster training to resume back a qmgr to training cluster. Done.
So, sir, if we want to basically, modify any queue manager property, we should first suspend the queue manager, or we can no need to do that.
No, modify a queue manager properties, you no need to suspend. But if you want to remove a queue manager from the cluster, first thing is you have to suspend the queue manager from the workload balancing. This is the first step.
So this is the only concept wherein we have to suspend.
Correct. If you want to remove the queue manager from the cluster, then the first step is we have to suspend it from the workload balancing. That is the first step while removing a queue manager from the cluster. Fine.
Okay, but in which all cases, sir, we are suspending the queue manager?
Simple. If you want to disable the workload balancing on the queue manager, then suspend is the command, because suspending. Okay, hold on. My statement is wrong. From workload balancing in training cluster. This is the exact statement, guys. Resume back to a queue manager to workload balancing in training cluster. So if you want to remove the queue manager from workload balancing, then suspend is the command. If you want to resume back a queue manager to workload balancing, then resume is the command. This is the only situation where we can use suspend and resume. But
okay,
while we want to remove a queue manager completely from the cluster, the first step is you have to suspend the queue manager from the workload balancing first. This is the step number 1.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So the first step is going to be we need to suspend the queue manager from the workload balancing. So the command is going to be like this. So we have to enter inside the qm1. We need to execute a command called suspend qmgr cluster training, so that the queue manager qm1 is going to be suspended from the workload balancing. Fine. Now, okay. So right now QM1 is not suspended, right? So we have to go to QM1. Then we have to execute suspend command. So suspend qmgr cluster train. Now your request, suspend request is accepted. Now if you execute display class qmgr qm type and then suspend command, now QM1 has been suspended from the workload balancing of training cluster. So it is still part of cluster only, but only workload balancing has been disabled. That is the meaning of suspend. If you execute display plus qmgr, it will show all the details. Absolutely no doubt, because still it is a member of the cluster, but it is just removed from the workload balancing. That's it, not yet from the cluster. Okay, step number 1 is done. Now we need to stop manually created cluster sender channel, and then we have to remove the cluster property of that particular channel. So first of all, we need to identify what are manually created cluster senders in QM1. So we already know the command. So display plus qmgr where def type equal to plus sdrb. When we execute plus sdrb, that will be manually created. When we execute class sender a, then it will be auto created. So right now in this queue manager, there is only a channel called 2.qm2. This is a manually created cluster sender channel. So right now this channel 2.qm2 now running. So we need to stop this channel. So stop channel 2.qm2. Done. It's now accepted. So the command is going to be okay. Let me write down this. So this is to find out manually created cluster sender channel, and then we need to stop the channel. So if it is in running status, we need to stop the channel. So that channel will be stopped state. If we execute display chs command 2.qm2, see now 2.qm2, now it is clearly says it's now stopped. Okay. Now also we have to remove the channel from the cluster. So right now if you see display channel 2.qm2, right now 2.qm2 cluster sender, it is a part of training cluster, right? So we have to nullify this property because we need to remove cluster attribute from 2.qm2. So for that, alter channel name, channel type is going to be cluster sender, and then make it cluster open brace, do double quotes, so that whatever the name we have given in the cluster, right, that property will be nullified. Done. It's now changed. So the command is going to be like this. So this is to remove a channel from the cluster. So if you see display channel 2.qm2, now see for 2.qm2 the cluster property is empty. It means now this channel is not a member of the cluster. Perfect. Now done. Step number 2 is done. Now we need to stop the cluster receiver channel. So let's see what is a cluster receiver channel in QM1. So display channel where channel type equal to class RCVR. Here I am just filtering out what are my cluster receiver channels. Okay. Now there are two cluster receiver channels. One is system def cluster receiver and another one is 2.qm1 cluster receiver. So we need to have our manually created cluster receiver only. So right now in QM1 there is a cluster receiver called 2.qm1 pointing to itself. Let's see the status of this channel. Display chs 2.qm1. Okay, right now 2.qm1 cluster receiver is running for two instances. One instance is from QM2, another instance is from QM3. So the thing is, in order to stop the cluster receiver instances, we have to stop the associate cluster senders in the remote queue managers. I mean to say, right now 2.qm1 cluster receiver, right, it is in running status for QM2. So we have to go to QM2 queue manager there must be a associate cluster sender in QM2. So we have to stop that so that this instance will be in shutdown state. For example, I will do one thing. I will take a duplicate tab.
Sir, but if you stop here also, the channels, the sender channels in QM2 and QM3 will get inactive, right?
No, no, because receiver channel cannot control the cluster sender, but the cluster sender can control the cluster receiver. That is what we know. That is what MQ behaves. So when you want
Sir,
to
but
start any
in point-to-point connection, if we stop receiver channel, automatically sender channel will go down or it goes into inactive state or
no,
retrying state.
no. Who said?
Sir, I
No, it
have
won't.
personally seen this in my MQ Explorer.
Send no cluster receiver will be in stopping state, not it will be in stopped state. Try it one more time. Try one more time. Okay, you mean to say if I stop this cluster receiver channel, it will be stopped. I mean, the cluster sender, associated cluster sender will be stopped. That's what you are saying, right?
Not stop, it will be in retrying mode.
So retrying is a problematic status, right?
Correct.
So that is the reason you know it. You should not stop the cluster receiver. You have to stop the cluster sender so that cluster sender will go to stopped state. Stopped state is a fine because you have intentionally stopped for a purpose. That is fine. But retrying, it's a problematic status. So the
Absolutely right,
thing
sir.
is,
But I'm just saying, like if you stop here, then in associated sender channel will be in retrying state.
let's see. Let's see. Okay, right now, so QM2, let's see the 2.qm1 cluster sender first. Because here 2.qm1 cluster receiver running for QM2 instance. So in another server, let me increase the font. I will go to QM1. Sorry, I will go to QM2. I will see the display CHS 2.qm1. So right now 2.qm1 cluster sender is now running for QM1. Now the recommended approach is we need to stop the channel. But Rahul, as you are asking to stop this channel, let's see what happens. Stop channel 2.qm1. So I am stopping cluster receiver. Okay. Before doing this, before testing this, let's execute a healthy status now, and then I will test your situation with this channel.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So right now I will go to QM2. I will stop this channel cluster sender with the name 2.qm1. So I will stop channel 2.qm1. It's now accepted. Now see if I execute display chs 2.qm1. Right now cluster sender to QM1 is now stopped. Now in the QM1, if I execute display chs command 2.qm1, now see only one instance, that is from QM3, is now running, and the another instance of QM2, it is not having any status because we have stopped the associated cluster sender from QM2. So this is the
Correct.
healthiest way of stopping a receiver channel or a cluster receiver channel. Now the thing is, we need to stop the another instance of cluster receiver, that is from QM3. So the thing is, the recommended way is we have to go to QM3 queue manager, and then we have to stop the cluster sender with the name 2.qm1 so that it will also goes down. Okay, but what we'll do is I will go to QM3. If I do display chs 2.qm1, see cluster sender is now running. Okay, now the recommended way is we need to stop this, but we'll test your scenario. We'll stop this receiver channel forcefully. Stop channel 2.qm1. But in the real time, this is not the recommended way. Do not follow this, but I'm just showing you a scenario what happens when you stop a receiver channel instead of the associate sender channel. Enter. Fine, your request is accepted. Now see the status, display chs 2.qm1. Now see what is the status of the cluster receiver channel.
Stopping.
Stopping, it means it's neither running nor stopped. It's in the middle, trying to stop. So the thing is, the cluster sender from the associate queue manager, it is trying to start the receiver, but we have, with the help of start command, it is trying to forcefully stop. Now this receiver channel is in confused. Hey, should I stop or should I run? So it is it is stuck in the middle. It is in stopping status. So let me check now. What is the status? See, still it is in stopping status. So stopping status means you don't know when it is going to stop. And if I see the associate sender status, see, it is still running. And if you see here, it is still stopped. So it will never stop because it is in confusion. So that is the reason never stop any receiver or any cluster receiver. We have to stop the associate sender because receiver is always under the control of sender channel. So now I am stopping the associate cluster sender. Now display CHS 2.qm1. Now see, the cluster sender pointing to qm1 has been now stopped. Now if we see the channel status in qm1, see, now it's stopped. Generally it should go to inactive state when we follow a recommended way, but here we have forcefully stopped, then it came to stopped state. Okay, so if it is stopped state, okay, that's fine. So now what we have done is we have stopped the cluster receiver. Okay, so what we have done was to stop a cluster receiver, we need to stop associate cluster sender channels. So as it is for QM1, in our case, what we have done is in QM2, we have stopped associate cluster sender 2.QM1, and also in QM3, we have stopped 2.QM1 cluster sender pointing to QM1. This is what we have done, so that all the two instances in QM1, so all the two instances of cluster receiver channels have been stopped. This is what we have done. Okay, now the thing is we have to remove the cluster receiver from the cluster. So the thing is we have to go to the queue manager one. So display qmgr qm name. Yes, we are in qm1. Now for a cluster receiver in qm1, see, cluster receiver in qm1, it is a member of the cluster, right? So remove this channel from the cluster. Alter channel 2.qm1 channel type plus receiver cluster, make it nullified. Done. Now display channel 2.qm1. Now see, it is not a member of the cluster. Fine. So with the help of this command, we have removed this queue manager. We have removed the channel from the cluster as well. So this is to remove 2.qm1 channel from cluster. Done. Now the communication, the physical communication has now completely stopped. Now we need to stop the listener in QM1. So what is the listener in QM1 that is running? Display LSTR of stop. So the listener is LSTR1, correct? So let's stop it. Right now the listener is running. If I do display LS status, it's now running. So let's stop the listener. Stop listener LSTR1. That display ls status lstr1. It's now stopped. Done. Now finally step number 5. This is very important step, guys. So the thing is qm1 is a full repository, right? So as it is being a full repository, so in queue manager one's memory, right now it is having all the queue manager details. So for example, if I execute display plus qmgr command, see right now queue manager one has forgot about itself. Only now we can see QM2, QM3, QM4, right? Correct? The QM1 details are not there in the cluster repository memory. Guys, are you getting?
Correct, sir.
Right? Now the thing is, this QM1 does not have any necessity to remember all these all these things also. Okay, so the thing is, as we have to remove QM1 permanently from the cluster, so instead of reset, we'll do refresh. Okay, so refresh command is really a dangerous command. I will tell you how it is dangerous. Now the thing is, QM1 being a full repository, and when we stop all the physical connection, so the QM1 itself forgot about itself, so resetting is not possible, resetting is not required. Now the thing is, we need to refresh the queue manager so that QM1 memory will be refreshed. So right now QM1 memory is having some older information, QM2, QM3, QM4. So we need to make QM1 to forget about all these things, so that we need to refresh the memory. So what happens is, queue manager forget about all its current memory, and it will try to refresh all its connections. So that is what the refresh command is. Okay. So QM1 being a full repository, what I will do is, and okay, full repository, and it has to remove from the cluster permanently. So when we want to remove a queue manager from the cluster permanently, then only use the refresh command. Otherwise, never use the refresh command, because when you use a refresh command, right, that will come out from the cluster permanently. So executing refresh is really dangerous, and you have to be cautious when you are executing a refresh command. Okay, so for example, see, now we have seen resume command, suspend command, then see refresh, reset. I will tell you. Now we are seeing a refresh command. Okay, so the refresh command syntax is going to be like this: refresh, refresh cluster, refresh cluster, cluster name, and then repos yes. So the thing is, we have to execute the command like this: refresh cluster, your cluster name, and put repos yes, so that the repository memory will be updated with the latest information. So the command syntax is like this: refresh cluster, your cluster name, and then repos yes, so that QM1 repository will be updated. Hit enter, so that refresh cluster now accepted. Now what happens in the backend is, the queue manager forgot about all its existing memory, and new memory will be created by establishing a new connections. But right now, to establish the new connections, there are no physical channels, there are no cluster objects. So if you execute display plus qmgr command, oh come on, it is still there. How come?
Sir, as you mentioned, once you add any content in the full repository queue manager, it is storing its data in the memory, right? So might
That's
be
what
due
we
to
are.
this reason.
No. That's what we are forcefully saying. Hey, forget about your memory. Please have the new memory. I'm explicitly we are
But
giving it,
you
right.
are, yeah, but you refresh the cluster, right? Training, wherein in cluster there are two full repository, QM1 and QM2.
No. Right now, QM1 is not a member of the cluster, right? See, hold
Sir,
on.
I guess you have to refresh the manager, QMGR.
QMGR. Let's see.
Refresh QMGR.
That's what I am also saying. Hold on. Refresh QMGR. Type processor. Refresh QM. Hold on. If I do
Object
reset,
all, there is a command. No?
reset cluster. Okay, hold on. Refresh qmgr config EV. Configuration in environment, right? So hold on, refresh qmgr, type config EV. Okay, display plus qm, display plus qmgr. No, refresh qmgr is also not working. How qm2 can forget about its existing memory? Okay, hold on. If I do reset reset cluster, reset cluster. Okay, got it. Okay, so it's not refresh, guys. It's a reset only. Hold on. Reset cluster. Training from this cluster. No, it is not part of a cluster. The reset cluster.
Sir, it is not
Okay,
a
hold
part
on.
of cluster, but it was a part of cluster, right? So you can reset actually, I guess.
Let's see. Let's see. If I do qm name qm2, I'm removing qm2 from qm. I mean, I'm resetting qm2 from the memory of qm1. A required keyword was not specified. I think action force remove. So qm2 action force remove. So I am forcefully removing this qm2 from qm1's training cluster memory. If I do display plus qmgr, yeah, now see qm2 gone. Now qm1 memory is getting updated, so it's reset only, guys. It's not a refresh. Okay, so we need to reset the cluster in qm1, and it has to reset its memory. So I am confused because we will remove the queue manager from the cluster very rarely. So that is the reason I also just got confused. Okay, that's fine. So it's reset only. Now I will remove qm3 also. So to do that, okay, hold on. Let me do a copy paste. So Control V. This is to remove qm2 from qm1's memory. Done. Now, if I want to remove qm3, the command is going to be like this.
Sir, star will also work, na?
You mean qm name of star?
Yes.
Let's see. I'm not sure on that. So anyways, I put that to remove qm3.
Because this is manually doing one by one activity, right? So that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, I think you're right, because in the real time, a full repository will be having hundreds of queue manager. If you want to remove hundreds of queue manager by commands, it's a time waste. So I think if I do display plus qmgr, okay, done. Now reset cluster training qm name star action force remove. This is what you were saying, right, Rahul?
Correct, correct.
No, error detected in a name keyword. No, it's not working. But hold on. If I do the star in a single quotes, then no, Rahul, it's not working. We have to delete one by one only. I think there is no option.
Okay, sir.
Name. So qm3 action force remove. Now reset cluster training QM name, QM4, action, force, remove. Fine. Now display plus qmgr, QM type all. See, there is no object. Now QM1 is not a member of the cluster because there is no physical connectivity. If you go to QM2, display plus qmgr, but see QM2 is memory, it is still having QM1's information. So we have to update its memory. So the thing is, in QM2, what I am doing is I am doing a reset cluster training, and then QM name QM1 action force remove. Done. Now see, display plus qmgr. What? It's not removed from QM2.
Sir, can you try refresh?
Okay, because it is a member of the cluster, so cluster refresh will be no. Refresh is a dangerous CR. You should not execute it in the full repository. Now, refresh should not be executed in the full repository, and I'm telling this with experience because I faced a nightmare one of my previous project by executing refresh command in the full repository. Because it will the full repository will be having hundreds of connections to the hundreds of QManagers inside this cluster. If you refresh it, all the connections will be discarded and it will again freshly establish a new connections. It's a problem.
So that is what we want, right? In our current scenario, that is what we want, right, sir?
No. If you do the in our current scenario, that is right. But the thing is, in the real time, what happens is right now, for example, there is a physical connectivity between the two full repositories, QM3 to QM4. And right now, let's assume there is a flow is going on between QM3 and QM4. And if you execute a refresh command, this connection will be gone and this message flow will be interrupted. This is the problem.
Okay.
Understand? Currently, the flow is going on from QM3 to QM4, and you did a refresh on the full repository. All the connections, like this connection, will be gone. So this flow will be interrupted. That is the reason you should not execute a refresh on the full repository. But why it is not forgetting about this training cluster? Okay, let me do like this. Display qmgr, display plus qmgr qmid. So QM1's QMID is this one. So reset cluster timing action force remove QMID display plus QMGR. Refresh cluster. Anyway, okay, let's try if this works. Refresh cluster. Repo. Okay, repository will be updated. Okay, refresh cluster training repositories. So repository will be updated with the new memory. Okay, display plus qmgr. No, see, still QM1 there in QM2's memory. The reason is display channel. There is a cluster sender to acha. I got it, guys. I got it. So in QM2, see, in QM2, there is a cluster sender pointing to QM1 and it is a member of the cluster, right? So remove this channel from the cluster and then do a reset, it will definitely work. So
then you have to remove QM3 cluster channels also. Cluster sender channel.
QM3 is a partial, right? You don't need to. We'll see.
Okay.
We'll see. Hold on. We'll see. So display channel 2.qm1 Now I'm removing this channel from the cluster in QM2. So alter channel 2.qm1 channel type plus str cluster. It's now changed. So display channel 2.qm1. Now 2.qm1 cluster has been removed from the cluster. Now display plus qmgr. See, it's gone now. Don't do any reset or refresh. When you remove that channel from the cluster, that's it. So now if I go to qm3, which is a partial, display plus qmgr. So qm1 memory is there. The reason is we need to alter channel 2.qm1 channel type plus sdr and then make the cluster. So we are removing we are removing all the manually created cluster sender channels. We are taking them out from the cluster. Done. It's now changed. Now if we execute display plus qmgr, see, now qm3 is displaying its own information and qm4. Come on, where is qm2? Guys, what's happening? Now I am in confusion. Okay, hold on. So QM3, acha. Okay, so I have restarted the server, right? That is the reason. Okay. Huh. So start channel 2.qm2. Channel not found. Now it won't create because this one not. Okay. So guys, the thing what happened is after the training, after the last session training, I have shut down this entire server. So what happened is all the automatic connections have been automatically deleted. That is the reason there was no auto cluster sender pointing to QM2, which is from QM3. So that is the reason QM3 is not displaying a channel to QM2. Okay. Okay, fine. Forget about it. Like it's a failure scenario because of the server shutdown. But basically you got the concept right. Like when you want to remove a queue manager from the cluster, first thing is you need to suspend it from the cluster. Then you need to find out a manually created cluster sender and you need to make it take out from the cluster. And then you need to stop the cluster receivers from the associate cluster sender. Then you need to stop the listener. And then you need to execute a reset, guys, not a refresh. Okay. So that
Sir, you said it is like after restarting the server, the logically created sender channels are removed. Can you check for QM4?
Why not? Run MQC QM4. This right now plus QMGR. See, QM2, QM4. There is no channel to QM1. So display CHS. See, there is no auto cluster sender to QM1 because after server reboot, the automatic created channels will be shut down. So
but the
whenever
data is stored in the memory, na sir. So how it is removed?
no, when you restart a queue manager, everything will be refreshed. Even when you shut down the queue manager, memory will be refreshed. Automatic sender channels will be gone.
Okay.
So that's how MQ behaves.
Okay, sir. Got it.
Right. So like here it was a failure scenario due to server shutdown. But anyway, so the process is like this, guys. And remember one thing, always do a reset when you want to remove the queue manager from the cluster. Don't refresh it because refresh is very, very dangerous commands. Like when you face the situation, then you will understand the danger, that the dangerousness with the refresh. Okay. So reset is the best one. Now, as qm1 being a full repository, we need to nullify the repos property using alter qmgr repos double quotes enter, so that the repos property will be empty. So queue manager will be turned to break from full repository to partial repository. So that's it, guys. So these are the steps of removing a queue manager from the cluster. Okay. But what I suggest you, if you want to practice in your systems, never remove a full repository first. First of all, remove a partial repository and then remove the full repository. Okay. So you will get a clarity what's happening in the partial and what's happening in the full repository. So
Sir,
because
after resetting, put down that command also, na? Like we remove the manually created sender channels.
no, we have not removed the manually created sender channels, but we have removed them from the cluster. We have not deleted them.
No, you resetted the QM2 channels, right? You reset
Yes,
and force remove the channels, na? Which are created between QM2 to QM1.
right, exactly.
QM1.
The reason why I have to do that was because QM1 was a full repository, and from QM2 there should be a physical connection so that they both will be in touch. That is the reason from QM2 I have executed one more step to remove that channel 2.qm1 pointing to QM1 from QM2.
Correct. So that command you mention here, that is what I'm seeing. Nothing else. In Notepad.
No, in QM2 I have not mentioned anything.
No, I'm saying
So
to mention it because we will remember this.
removing a QM1, I am also mentioning a full repository.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, after doing this, you have to remove the channels pointing to QM1 full repository from all other queue managers. Because it is a QM1 is a full repository, definitely so many connections from different queue managers. So you have to go to each and every queue manager, you have to remove them. This is extra work in the full repository. If it is a partial repository, then this is not needed. So in QM2, what we have done was alter channel 2.qm1 cluster sender, sorry, channel type plus SDR, and then cluster. So this is what I have done in QM2. Okay, and also in QM3 also there is a cluster sender pointing to QM1, correct? So in QM3 we need to alter channel 2.qm1 channel type plus SDR and then cluster empty. So in QM4 you no need to execute this step because QM4 never pointed to manually to QM1. So like in QM2 we have manually created channel, we have removed it from the cluster. In QM3 we have this channel 2.qm1 pointing to QM3, it's a manually created, so we have to remove it from the cluster. But in QM4 you no need to execute the step because QM4 never pointed to QM1 manually. It means we have never created any cluster sender pointing to QM1. That is the reason we no need to perform. So removing a full repository from the cluster, it's a headache, guys. Right now for queue manager cluster, see how much headache we have faced. But removing a partial repository, bit simple. You just have to suspend the queue manager, and then you have to remove the cluster sender from the cluster. You have to remove the cluster receiver from the cluster, then stop the listener and then reset it. That's it. Its memory will be refreshed. That's it. Nothing else. Understand? So I know it's a
Yes,
really
sir.
bit confusing, but when you do practice, right, you will get a clarity how to remove a queue manager from the cluster. So fine. So with this, clusters concept is completely done. Now tomorrow we are going to start with the client server architecture. So client server architecture, like pretty simple concept. After that, we are going to start with the security. So most probably tomorrow, day after tomorrow, and okay, maybe in another 3 sessions, we are going to finish our entire training. Okay. Okay. Okay, guys, that's all for today. We'll meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. IST.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.